Hey, everybody. Whoa, I sound really good. Check this out. My name is Escobar, and today we're going to be talking about just LoRa mesh stuff. Typically, when I give talks like this, it's coming more from like a stance of authority and like, oh, I know all this stuff. Like, let's talk about it and have fun with that. That's some of this talk, but mostly this is questions that I have for all of you. My first question is raise your hand if you like MeshCore better than Meshtastic. Whoa, well, you got two. Raise your hand if you like Meshtastic more than MeshCore. Okay, so it's not like an overwhelming majority, but I was thinking it was going to be like, the Hatfields and the McCoys, one versus the other. But I like both equally. Some have, it has different strengths, one over the other. I just really was curious to see how some felt. I was talking to the Meshtastic devs earlier today. It's a really good perspective. I'm hoping everybody can just get along. Anyways, all right, so we're going to be talking about a handful of different things. We're going to be talking about some rugged repeaters that you can make. We're going to be talking about multi-year nodes, so nodes that I have on mountains that I have not touched in years and how I built them and the conditions that they had to survive. A little bit about bridging MeshCore and Meshtastic. That gets a lot of heat and a lot of hate. People don't like to let those two touch or talk to one another, so here we are. And then the last thing that I have that I'll talk kind of peppered on my way through is I'm interested in doing some mesh on hot air balloons, or not hot air balloons, but on helium balloons. We have a couple of universities that are already on board, but I want to get a bunch of ham community people on board, other universities, and it would be really cool to make a mesh that goes coast to coast, even just for a couple of days. So we'll talk about that, and I want to solicit your feedback on all of that. At any point, if you want to respond to anything that I want to say, if you have a question, raise your hand and interrupt me. I don't like just talking at a sea of goldfish. So if you have something you're like, oh, what's that? Or I don't understand. By all means, just feel free to raise your hand. You won't interrupt me. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So I'm very used to getting interrupted day in and day out. And for starters, this is a picture of me on the central coast of California where I live, placing a Meshtastic and a MeshCore node separate on their own different poles out on the central coast. And so at a point, this was bridging some of Northern California, the Bay Area, into San Luis Obispo, and that sort of a setup. So going into it, the reason why I love Meshtastic, MeshCore, whatever your LoRa mesh du jour is because it doesn't require a license. All the time I try and talk to my friends and family, oh, you should get your ham radio license. And they're like, what can you do with it? And I'm like, well, you can talk to other ham radio people. And they're like, why can't you just make a phone call? And you don't have to have that argument. With Meshtastic, you can hand somebody a $25 radio, download the app, whichever one you want to use, and now they can talk off-grid, encrypted comms, all that kind of good stuff. And the price is just so unbelievably cheap that I'll just keep some in my bag and hand them out to anybody that I'm like, hey, you really need to get involved in this. I'm also a member of the RF Village, so if you want to talk Meshtastic, MeshCore, all that kind of stuff, we have tons of challenges doing all that kind of stuff over there, so feel free to come by and talk to us. Other reasons why I just love the whole LoRa mesh situation is because it's great. My kids love it. Hikers, preppers, hackers. I'm pretty much all four of those in one place. So that's the perfect Venn diagram for all the different things that I'm into. And it's also that gateway into ham radio. The amount of people that I've been able to convert to getting their tech license because they're like, it would be really cool to do X, Y, or Z, or to have a little bit more power, or to do, so on and so forth. And it's like, hey, excellent news. All you have to do is just take this pretty simple tech exam to get in and involved in all of it. So these are some of the main reasons. And I don't know if, first of all, who has a Meshtastic device here? Okay, great. Okay. I was expecting a Meshtastic, MeshCore. I was expecting like half of you to raise your hand for Meshtastic and half of you. Okay, here's the real question. How many of you running Meshtastic right now on your device? How many of you are running MeshCore on your device? Yeah, I like that two handhold. There we go. That's the right answer. Bridge those meshes. Again, they're both good in their different respects. I love them both. I don't want to be on one side or the other. I don't want mom and dad to fight. So, talking about the hot air balloon, there's some distance records that these are by all means unofficial. And if anybody has distance records that they know of that exceed these, I would love to know them. But I want to start like a leaderboard. And I know Meshtastic has on their website some leaderboards of some of the communications that they've made, but I want to start to really push these. So I had a thought with some grad students. So I teach a cybersecurity course at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and some grad students are like, "Hey, what could we do with this?" And I was like, "Well, you guys want to put one on a helium balloon and see how far we can get past the horizon?" So I think we're going to get some funding for that. And we have some other universities on board. So we'll talk more about that. But I want to get some real legit numbers. I want to get some, like, create some competition there. And one of my thoughts is if we get enough, ham communities involved to watch as, like, basically watchers on the ground, or if anybody wants to, build their own kit, and we'll, release all of our configs so that they can communicate with us, I think they'll be really fun. So if anybody has any different numbers in these, my email is just down in the bottom. I want to talk to you about those numbers. Does anybody have any questions? Anything? I'm just talking to all of you. So these are not my distances. These are just what I've found on the internet. So some of these so some of them are not even like Meshtastic or MeshCore. Some of them are LoRaWAN, and it's really fuzzy. A lot of them are Meshtastic, and they're typically going to be something on like long slow. So it's going to be a much longer transmit time. Although I believe, is anybody here from the Bay Area Mesh in San Francisco? I think you guys were doing a hot air balloon, and you guys didn't do long slow for some reason. I don't remember why. Anyways, we can talk more about that later. But hey, from Bay Area Mesh. I'm in the Fresno Mesh. We're close together. All right. So as far as like talking about the balloons and some of the things that we have some ideas for, we obviously can't control the curvature of the Earth. We can't control really our power legally anyways. And so, we can't really control if somebody's going to be logging, that data on those specific, configurations that we have. So that would be my ask to you, is that if you're interested in any way, shape, or form participating in this at time TBD, send me an email. This is one of the very rare times where I feel like a bunch of the mesh community is kind of squished all together into one room. Normally we're all just in our own discrete discords, which I love Discord, don't get me wrong, but the amount of messages that just get generated on any given day, there's no way that I could read them all from all the different mesh communities that are out there. But so if we get the higher, with MeshCore, Meshtastic, the higher you get, the better line of sight you get. That is almost the number one thing. If you could adjust it, that's what you'd want to go for. And what solves this is a balloon, right? So the idea here is that we get a bunch of these balloons, we start going balloon to balloon to balloon, and see where that goes from there. So looking at some of the different ways that we've been able to kind of, I guess, jimmy rig this all together, is as meshes get closer together, we start to run into region problems, right? I'm not sure if any of you have seen a mesh crash. I think they did at Hamvention, and then also I don't know if the DEF CON mesh has crashed. Maybe it did a couple of years ago. I'm not quite sure. But when you start bridging these areas together, it kind of gets really congested. So different areas will move into different configurations. Fresno, our mesh, we're still on long fast, mostly because there's not enough of us to really make a ton of use of it. But then as we start trying to integrate other meshes, it can get a little bit tricky in having to change different configurations around. And the unique thing that I really love is that DEF CON is the #1 location for all mesh devices. I have Mesh Monitor running on down at the RF Village, and I think right before I came up here, we're up to 1,600 nodes, and that's just me logging since 10:30 this morning. So I haven't even been logging a full 24 hours. So that is crazy impressive, and that is the reason why DEF CON. Actually, here's another question: who's running the DEF CON version of Meshtastic? Okay, great. Yeah, and so the difference between the DEF CON version of Meshtastic is basically it's just the messages are so fast and so quick, so they can try and keep down the airtime as much as possible. Because normally with Meshtastic, you're trying to transmit miles, but at DEF CON, you're transmitting inches. So everybody's so close together that you don't necessarily need all the goodness that the chirp protocol provides you. That all being said, though, this is one of those times where we are all in one room, we're all together. So if anybody wants to try and bridge meshes, if you're from the Bay Area Mesh, if you're from down south, we'd love to talk to you and try and see how can we get some ways to bridge and interconnect, because I know that there's a lot of different things changing underneath us. So let's talk about some of the more crazy nodes that are out there. So I live at the base of the Sierras in Fresno, California. We have a lot of fire danger. If you guys ever heard of the Creek Fire, that just came ripping through, and we couldn't see the sun for about a week. So when I place nodes up in high foothills, even with permission, I'm so gosh darn scared of creating a fire from LiPo batteries, because the batteries that we use for most of our nodes are all LiPo batteries, and they do not perform well in heat. So what I did is I put it in this metal enclosure right here, and the problem with that is that when you stick a metal enclosure in 110 degree ambient, direct sunlight, it got to be around, I don't know, it was like I think the highest temperature I saw was 160 degrees before I pulled that sucker apart, hoping that it wasn't going to explode in my face. And so it very quickly cooked all the batteries that were in there. I use a particular type of battery called Orbtronic, I guess that's the brand, because it looked like all the protections you could possibly want. But I have since, for my more rugged nodes, started moving to LFP and doing lithium iron phosphate, which is not as convenient because the rack boards don't natively support it, so you have to do all your independent charge controlling and all that kind of stuff. But this metal enclosure is really, really solid. And let me see if I have the other picture of, so talking about that other slide, this kind of dovetails into it. But basically what I did is when I realized that it was cooking that node inside of it, I 3D printed basically a sleeve to go over top and then sprayed it with UV stabilized spray paint, and that works really well. Now I'm 1 degree over ambient, which is still a little dicey on a 110 degree day to be cooking your batteries that much, but I feel okay because they're in a steel container. But yeah, it is on those hot days, I look at that temperature very, very carefully. Yeah, I don't know if any of you have any extreme environments. If you do, I'd love to hear what you've done to solve them. I was recently given permission to put a node on a 7,000 foot peak in the Sierras, and it's a hike to get up there. And so I'm trying to think through all the ways, all the possibilities, all the things that could go wrong. And this is where, again, I'd love your feedback either right now or afterwards, because I only want to go hike this mountain one time, and I don't want to have to go back up there because it is a full day trek to get up there. So some of the things that I'm looking at, let me see if I have that in that slide. I'm going to just jump around. Sorry for that. This is probably the best slide for it, but maybe not. I don't know. I thought I had it in there somewhere. Oh, here we go. So I use lithium iron phosphate for stuff. The problem with lithium iron phosphate, if you ever dealt with it, you can't charge really below zero. Well, guess what? In the Sierras, in the wintertime, it's going to get below zero. So, doing things like I have a Victron charge controller that, has low temperature protection. The battery, it's running off of a 20 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery, so it should last for a really, really long time, even in the depths of winter. So hopefully that's okay. Again, I don't want to have to climb up there if I don't have to again. So my goal is, if any of you have better ideas, we're going to go with that. The other thing that is also going to go in this node is I have an Arduino that has a basically once a day it'll wake up for an hour, and it'll wake up a Raspberry Pi and an LTE modem and like a whole nice little software stack. So I should be able to remotely flash these devices in the event that there's a better firmware or something comes out. I should be able to have that and then go to sleep, and that way I can remotely access it, remotely flash it if I need to, and I don't have to again worry about going up to it. One of the nodes that I built, that one that has that sunshade on it, I had not seen that node in 2 years. Still transmits, but man, it is on a really, really old firmware. I still have to access it using the legacy administrator tools, and I'm really trying to avoid that and see how many years I could get that node to stay up there. Has anybody built any like crazy ruggedized nodes? Can you tell me about it? Or do you want to tell me after the fact? That's fine. Yep. Yeah. Nice. Wow. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, if any of you guys are interested, we have so something very similar to that. One of our other village members, they found a buoy light, and it's a fully enclosed sealed thing for $12 on Amazon. It has the solar panels and everything. It's pretty slick. He found it, and I was like, "This is cool. I should have taken a picture for it for the talk, but I wanted to buy one before all of you bought out the Amazon store. So if you want to see it, you come see it. But I'm gonna go buy mine first before I let you know where it is." Let's see where we get started. So the way that I kind of have my mesh set up is I have my handheld. I live in a very treed area in the middle of Fresno. And then I have basically, I used a fishing pole. So I did this in the summertime when it's not as noticeable. So it got more wife's stamp of approval because it was not very well seen in the tree. Now, tree loses leaves and, it becomes a little bit more visible. But this is one of those rack enclosures, and it's just spinning freely in my tree. And every time I talk about it, everybody's like, how does that thing get charged? And it stays, almost, it never dips below 70% charge. And it's just freely spinning up there. But what's great about this node is that this is around 70 feet up in a tree. And so what this allows me to do is, I can basically have any device in my house, and it allows me to reach any of our mountain nodes that are out in the Sierras. So if you're building out a mesh, thinking through how are you going to get up and out to some of your other ones, that's what I've been talking to a lot of folks at. And RF Village is like, hey, if you want to build a community mesh, what's it look like? How do you get approval from landowners? I don't endorse guerrilla putting one up, but there's some really fun stories of people guerrilling things onto water towers that they don't have permission to, or lighthouses. I really enjoy those stories, but I do not condone it, so don't do it. But if you do it, tell me the story because I really want to know. But yeah, so use a fishing pole. Oftentimes if I go backpacking or just out in the mountains, I have like a little collapsible rod that I'll bring with me. So this is one of the things that I'll do is I'll just have that collapsible rod and I'll just yeet it over a really tall, sequoia. And now I have 300-foot antenna. Yeah, see, the slingshots, again, I have kids and I don't trust them around the slingshot. But a fishing pole, on the other hand, they can always learn how to cast. Yeah, so the other thing that I always kind of, now that there's MeshCore versus Meshtastic, is now I have two of these in my tree, one to do each. So you have to keep them spread enough apart so they don't, clump on each other, but it's pretty fun. But yeah, it's pretty easy to install these. Again, just get a $15 collapsible fishing pole and rock and roll from there. This node in and of itself can go about 40 miles. I've gone about 40 miles just in this being in my tree. It helps that I live in a valley and it's pretty flat, but that's just point to point. If this reaches, so this one will reach one of the nodes that we have on a mountain, and that can reach from Fresno into the Bay Area mesh, and that's about a couple hundred miles, so it's pretty consistent. So I've failed a lot in doing things. It's really easy to get up here and do a talk about all the things that work and how awesome you are and how, all these cool things that you've done. But I think it's important to talk about this. One main hurdle I never anticipated were cows. So some of the property that I had permission to put these nodes on, they had cattle. I did not think cattle and mesh nodes would go wrong, but they like to use these posts for scratching. And so you'll see, some of them just trampled. So trying to defend against cows is something that wasn't in my repertoire, but now it is. So if you have bovine on your hills, just make sure that you know how to defend against it or how to strengthen against it. The big one for me is heat. Heat, I just live in the Central Valley, and again, it gets very, very hot, and I get really nervous. My dad is a firefighter 40 years, so if I caught anything on fire, he'd be the first one to get me. So I have to make sure I don't burn anything down. Water is also a huge, huge issue, and this should go for really no surprise, but a lot of times I'll think, I don't need to conformal coat this. I don't need to protect it. It'll probably be fine. And then, I look at a node and I'm like, I wonder why it stopped transmitting so well. And then you pour out a little bit of water and you realize, oh, okay, well, that's why. Especially coastal conditions, same thing. If things rust out quite quickly. So I very quickly know with my antennas what things are not going to hold up, because even just a couple of months in that salt air will corrode many, many things that are exposed. So just good lessons that if you're building things, just keep in mind. Also birds. Birds love to perch and crack walnuts and acorns and all the things that they find up there. Didn't realize that until the fiberglass nodes had a ton of little pecked holes on them. So good thing to know if you need to try and deter birds, however you're going to do that. And then one time I hiked all the way up to the top of a mountain, placed a node, transmitted totally fine, and then the next day it stopped. And when I climbed all the way back that mountain, the little I don't know what you call that connector, the micro little snap-on connector, IPEX. I don't know what is it called. Does anybody know what that's? What was it? GST. I don't know. It's whatever. It's the little one that's on the rack board that popped off, and so it's awesome. I hiked all that way to have the most minuscule thing. So now I hot glue every single one of those little connectors. Ask me how I know. The one thing I actually haven't had an issue with, knock on wood, is batteries. My batteries have been super solid. Again, if you've had any issues with batteries, I would love to know which ones to avoid. Has anybody had an issue with a battery? What was your issue? It caught on fire. I've had that happen, not with a mesh node, but I've had one catch on fire. Come talk to me later. What did you do anything to make it catch on fire? So it just spontaneously combusted? It just existed. Was it like can you tell me about what it was in? Oh boy. It's totally not like 110 degrees at home right now. I got to make a couple phone calls. Um, it builds character, yeah, while you're in jail. All right, yeah, fire scares me, so I think we already talked about that slide. So big meshes are a problem sometimes. I don't know. I love it. I think the more people we can get communicating, I think the better. There's lots of different feelings. So don't come stone me after this talk if I don't say exactly what you want. Personally, for me, I like to keep everything vanilla as possible. That's why, in large part, I haven't moved a lot of my routers, repeaters, and all my nodes, anything other than the defaults. Because if there's somebody new that just watched a YouTube video from Ham Radio Crash Course and is like, oh man, now I need to buy one of these things, I don't want it to be like, oh, no one's here to listen, right? And they're not going to know to go look for a different configuration. They're probably going to try it one time, and that's going to be it, right? So that's why I keep all my things on vanilla. I can understand why different meshes change things. But one of the things that I really like to do is I really like to just see what the entire landscape looks like. So we've been working on trying to find ways with like concentrators, SDRs, to try and get all of these devices so we can see all the different configurations, all the different things that are out there. But in reality, instead of buying like a $5,000 SDR that can cover all of it, we ended up just buying just a ton of the little Zhao boards for like $10 a pop and just having every single possible configuration and flash configuration on there so that we can catch everybody and then try and funnel them all together. So I'd love to hear if your mesh crew has changed from the defaults, why you did it, and come talk to me about it. I'd be really curious. I also just love that DEF CON just absolutely nails it with like 2,000 nodes. It's absolutely incredible to see how many there are. It's also really funny too, just, back at home, most of my friends are normies that don't have antennas sticking out of their backpack or in their trees and all that kind of stuff. And so when I tell them, oh, I'm going to DEF CON, and they like see my backpack and there's like 3 antennas coming out of it, they're like, man, are you going to be kind of weird? And I'm like, I'm going to be the most normal person there. So I appreciate all of you for making me feel normal and making me feel at home. I'm also not super into MQTT. I understand why it's there, but I like to keep things RF. But it is really neat to see using MQTT what the rest of the country, what the rest of the world is doing, what's out there. So, we can talk about that later too. So, bridging MeshCore and Meshtastic, I love both of them. They both do completely different things. One of my favorite things to use is, I believe it's called Mesh Monitor. Yeah, Mesh Monitor. Mesh Monitor. So I have it running in the RF Village right now. I love just aggregate everything that's happening because we have tons of different nodes, tons of different configurations, and having a single dashboard where I can look at everything, look at all the traffic. I don't have to go. Before, what I was doing is I would just have, my phone, and I would have like the MeshCore app, the Meshtastic app, and I would have like the web console, the web GUI, just all these things, and it was too much. Using the Mesh Monitor is great. There's the Akita bridge, you could do that. I played around with it just a little bit, but natively there's not really a way to like integrate these two, and I think that's probably by design, but it makes me sad because I love all things mesh and I just want them all to talk and communicate. The other thing that's really nice about Mesh Monitor, if you haven't played with it, just install it. It's a Docker container. It's super easy to install. But what I really like about it is I have different nodes that I can't see because they're so far away from me. And so what I can do is, as long as there's a Raspberry Pi with like a simple little Heltec board connected to it, I can use that and feed that data into Mesh Monitor so I can see and view multiple meshes and kind of aggregate that data all together in one spot. Because when I'm working, I just like to have a tab open, and just glance over at it and see how things are. Does anybody have any questions? Anything I feel like I'm just talking at all of you, which is totally fine, but yeah. Yeah, as a daemon running it on there. So I have. I gave a talk last year on this. I made a C2. So my day job is I'm a red teamer. So I like break in, steal things, do all the fun stuff. And so I made a command and control infrastructure over Meshtastic, which is pretty useful because you just plug that into one of your drop boxes. You drop it off at a company, and if you need to do some debugging, you're not going to get a lot of data. You're not going to get a lot of commands. But talk about there being no noise floor. Talk about exfilling data over, Meshtastic. And typically you roll into a big city and there's already like a, huge mesh community, and you just use, your own encrypted channel on it, and you make use of all their stuff. And so then you write that up for the client and they're like, how do we defend against that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. But yes, I have used that, and I love it. It's great. All this stuff is great. I don't know. I'm such a nerd. So, yeah, the balloon. So let's talk about the balloon. Does anybody have helium air balloon experience with floating these kind of things around? Can you tell me about your experience?
Not with mesh, but with high altitude balloons and APRS.
Yeah.
Works really good. It's expensive. Helium is not cheap.
Yeah, it is not. Well, and so one of the things that I have in the slide, where is it? I'll find it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Somebody was trying to convince me to use hydrogen. And like, you heard of the Hindenburg? And, like, I get it. It'll be, like, at 70,000 feet. But, like, I'm not. Ain't no way am I dealing with that. Where? Yeah. Well, and that's why we'd have to do Mylar. Anyways. Yeah. Yeah. So these are the things that I'd love to talk to anybody about if you do have experience in it. Again, we're working with some universities to get this all squared away. And this will – my goal is to make some distance records with these. So as far as the people that have Air Force that I've talked to, other ham radio enthusiasts that have launched stuff, as long as you keep it under these limits, you're pretty good as far as not having to, as long as you don't have a high density, as long as you don't have a high weight, they're typically okay. You just have to call a phone number and let them know what's going on. I had a humorous story that, let me try and like mentally redact some of the information. They were floating a balloon and it went over LAX. And it was just like stuck at like 70,000 feet or something. And they're freaking out, and I think they called the Air Force, and the Air Force is like, that's fine. You're like, what? This is crazy. I feel like they would have a lot more feelings about that, but here we are. So one of the things that I was thinking about is, and again, love to solicit feedback. This is one of those points where I am going out past my knowledge and talking to a room full of people about things that I'm probably going to sound like an idiot for, and is going to be saved on the internet for a million years going forward. But one of my thoughts is to have a balloon that has no battery. Use Mylar and just use solar panels to save on weight, because the higher you go up, the better solar exposure you get for those panels. The colder it gets, the better it gets for those panels. And then basically just have these things float for a while and use the ability to have them float for a while, but only be active during the daytime. And then you also don't have any fire danger. Again, I don't like fire. I don't like batteries. We can have a private conversation about that later if you want to ask me about why that is the case. Yes?
It's really hard to maintain orientation. You can't put anything on the envelope, of course. So you have to suspend it below the envelope.
Yes.
And maintaining orientation is extremely difficult.
And so if you can't hear it, maintaining orientation is very difficult. And so my thought on that was dangling an Omni down below it, just so you got the... Oh, the solar panel. Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. So I was thinking about just having to go point straight up, no orientation towards the sun or anything, just oversize it and just... Yeah, but you don't think you'd be able to get some ambient... See, this is why we got to try it. This is why we got to experiment.
We flew an experiment using we did student-based experiments.
Okay.
One of the student-based experiments was, can you collect solar energy at altitude?
Okay. Even if you had like a long string between the balloon and the like, if you had like, I don't know, like a 40-foot like string.
So if you have a long string, then you have the problem of force vectors when it's being blown around.
Oh, see, this is why we need to talk.
So we use lithium sulfur dioxide batteries.
Okay. All right, we'll talk after this. But see, this is exactly what I want to talk about. These are things that I want to do, and I figured DEF CON's the place with enough nerdy folks that would be able to guide me and steer me in the right direction. Plus, there's also a 10,000-meter lockout on GPS so that you don't make an ICBM at home. So that's something we also have to contend with as well. And not breaking an antenna on liftoff. And then also just having ground receiving stations that can be able to receive it. And then just one of my other ideas that I quickly squashed was not using, I was like, oh, you know what? Helium's expensive. I'll just go to Target or Costco and buy those helium tanks. And those are only 80% helium. So you want to go get you want to go actually rent and get your, your 99% helium. So that's going to be, again, very expensive. Luckily, we have university ties that can get that for us. So, but trying to think through this and trying to think, hey, how can we extend this to other, ham communities, other mesh communities? We want to give them an easy source. So again, preferably not hydrogen, but that would that would be funny to do once. Let's see. So we talked about that already, setting up all the different things. Yeah. So if you guys are interested, come talk to me about it. Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening.